Imagine a seemingly perfect family, a loving couple, 2 daughters, and a recently adopted teenage girl. Now, add to this image a forbidden affair, a diabolical plan, and 178 stab wounds. What appeared to be a happy home transformed into the scene of one of the most shocking and disturbing crimes in recent times. How did an 18-year-old girl go from adopted daughter to murderer? And what was the adoptive father's role in this macabre plot? Prepare to dive into a case that will leave you speechless and question everything you thought you knew about love, family, and obsession. This is the story of the Knoefel family, an account that proves reality can be much more frightening than fiction. 1. Sabrina's troubled childhood. Sabrina Zunich was born on October 27, 1994, in Cleveland, Ohio. Her childhood was marked by a chaotic family environment. Her father, diagnosed with schizophrenia, was often aggressive towards Sabrina and her mother. To cope with her husband's aggression, Sabrina's mother became a user of various types of drugs, including controlled medications. This resulted in frequent arrests of both parents. Sabrina's custody was frequently alternated between her parents, depending on which one was out of prison at the time. At age 4, Sabrina was diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Later, she also received diagnoses of depression and borderline personality disorder. There are debates about whether these problems were caused by the chaotic environment in which she was raised or if she was born with a predisposition to these disorders. Sabrina's grandmother was apparently the only stable figure in her life, trying to provide the necessary affection and attention. However, this did not prevent Sabrina from getting into frequent trouble, including at school. Before the age of 14, she was already involved with drugs, following her parents' example. It was at this time that Sabrina was referred to an institution called Emma Keeley, which rehabilitates young people and directs them towards adoption. During her adolescence, Sabrina went through several foster families, but always ended up returning to the orphanage, seeming to be a lost cause in the adoption system. 2. Adoption by the Knoefel family. In July 2011, when Sabrina was 16 years old, her luck apparently changed. She was adopted by the couple Kevin and Lisa Knoefel. Kevin was born on June 16, 1970, and he and Lisa married in 2006. Lisa already had a daughter from a previous relationship with Megan, and a few years after their marriage, the couple had a biological daughter named Haley. Lisa worked as a social worker and was passionate about children. Due to her work, she often empathized with children in municipal orphanages, helping to care for them until they were adopted. Kevin, in turn, worked as a truck driver. The family lived on the outskirts of Cleveland and was considered normal and happy. Sabrina's case was different for Lisa, as Sabrina was already a teenager. Lisa was moved by her story and decided, along with Kevin, to adopt her permanently. At first, everything seemed perfect. Sabrina quickly adapted to the new family's routine and showed great gratitude for being adopted. She got along well with her adoptive sisters and enjoyed spending time playing with them. For a period, harmony prevailed in the family, which positively reflected on Sabrina's behavior and studies. She became one of the best students in her class, getting excellent grades and showing exemplary behavior. This positive change seemed to indicate that Sabrina had finally found the stability and family environment she so desperately needed. 3. Development of an improper relationship. As time passed, the family dynamics began to change. Sabrina started to feel that Lisa treated her biological children differently from her, the adopted daughter. This generated jealousy and caused Sabrina to distance herself from Lisa. In contrast, she grew closer to Kevin, seeing in him someone who didn't distinguish between the daughters. This closeness between Sabrina and Kevin began to bother people close to the family, including Lisa, The behavior of the two seemed to exceed the normal boundaries of a father-daughter relationship. A particularly strange episode occurred when Sabrina, then 16 years old, said she was afraid to sleep alone after watching a horror movie and asked Kevin to sleep with her. Another alarming incident happened when Kevin took Sabrina to talk to the school social worker after a fight. In the assistant's office, Kevin asked Sabrina to sit on his lap, which she did, despite her age. The romantic relationship between Kevin and Sabrina began in mid-2012, less than a year after the adoption. It all started when Kevin asked Sabrina to massage his legs, claiming pain due to his work as a truck driver. The massages, which initially were on the calf, gradually moved up until the situation evolved into sexual relations. While the relationship between Kevin and Sabrina intensified, Kevin and Lisa's marriage deteriorated. Arguments became frequent, usually about the excessive attention Kevin gave to Sabrina. Lisa, at this point, still didn't know about the affair, but felt that her husband was neglecting her and her daughters in favor of Sabrina. The situation reached a point where Kevin and Sabrina no longer hid their relationship inside the house. Kevin had plans to divorce Lisa, get custody of Haley, his biological daughter, and Sabrina, with whom he intended to live as a couple, raising Haley as if she were their daughter. 4. Marital problems. As the relationship between Kevin and Sabrina intensified, Kevin and Lisa's marriage began to crumble rapidly. Lisa noticed a drastic change, her husband's behavior, noting that he was giving excessive and unusual attention to Sabrina, her adopted daughter. Arguments between Kevin and Lisa became increasingly frequent and intense. The main point of contention was the disproportionate attention Kevin was dedicating to Sabrina, to the detriment of Lisa and their other daughters. Lisa felt that her husband was becoming negligent towards her and their biological daughters, focusing all his attention on Sabrina. The situation reached a critical point when, during a particularly heated argument, Kevin became violent. He went as far as grabbing his daughter by the neck, an act that led Lisa to call the police. This action enraged Kevin, who swore to get revenge on Lisa for involving the authorities. It was at this moment that Kevin decided to ask for a divorce. He informed Lisa that he would fight for custody of Haley, his biological daughter, as well as custody of Sabrina. However, his intentions towards Sabrina were no longer those of an adoptive father, but rather those of a romantic partner. While the divorce process was not finalized, everyone continued living in the same house, creating an extremely tense and uncomfortable atmosphere. Sabrina and Kevin no longer made efforts to hide the nature of their relationship, which Lisa found repugnant. In turn, Sabrina, in an act of provocation, began to treat Haley, Lisa and Kevin's daughter, as if she were her own child. She used terms typical of a mother-daughter relationship with the girl, calling her daughter and referring to herself as Mommy in Lisa's presence, which caused even more friction in the already troubled family dynamics. This unsustainable situation led Lisa to try to expel Sabrina from the house. However, Sabrina managed to convince Lisa not to do so, claiming that it was all just a joke and that she would immediately stop this behavior. Sabrina even said that she didn't want Kevin and Lisa to separate, as the separation would be traumatic for her, since she saw them as her adoptive parents. Despite all these tensions and conflicts, Lisa still maintained hope that, over time, family problems could be resolved. However, Kevin had already decided that he no longer wanted to continue with the marriage, although he was not willing to divide the family's assets or custody of his daughter Haley. 5. Murder plan. Kevin, dissatisfied with his marriage and wanting to be with Sabrina, devised a plan to get rid of Lisa. He revealed to Sabrina that Lisa had a life insurance policy worth $800,000, commenting that she was worth more dead than alive. Kevin convinced Sabrina to carry out the murder, claiming that it would be easier for her to escape suspicion. On the morning of November 15, 2012, Kevin staged an emotional crisis, stopping the car on the way to Sabrina's school. He cried, saying he had argued with Lisa and was thinking of killing himself. This emotionally manipulated Sabrina, making her agree to kill Lisa to save Kevin. Kevin meticulously detailed the plan for Sabrina. She was to make it look like a robbery gone wrong, entering the couple's bedroom at night, covering Lisa's face and stabbing her in the chest. Kevin instructed Sabrina to twist the knife after each stab to cause more severe injuries. The attack was to occur when Kevin was traveling for work as a truck driver, providing him with an alibi. Kevin also instructed Sabrina to mess up the house and take valuable objects to simulate a robbery. He reassured her by saying that, if she were caught, they could plead insanity due to their history of mental problems. Kevin planned every detail, assuring Sabrina that they could soon be together. In the days leading up to the crime, Kevin and Sabrina exchanged numerous messages and calls, presumably discussing and refining the details of the plan. The document mentions that in the 2 weeks prior to the murder, they communicated by phone 1,491 times, and on the day of the crime alone, they exchanged 78 text messages between 7 p.m. and 1 a.m. 6. The crime. In the early hours of November 15th to 16th, 2012, Sabrina, who had recently turned 18, put the plan into action. Around 1:30 a.m., she put on a mask and went to the kitchen, where she picked up a knife. Then, she went to the room where Lisa was sleeping. Sabrina began the attack, delivering the first knife blow against Lisa. The victim woke up immediately and started screaming, fighting for her life. Lisa's screams woke up her older daughter, Megan, who was only 13 years old at the time. Megan ran to her mother's room and came upon the horrible scene of Sabrina attacking Lisa. Realizing she wouldn't have the strength to defend her mother, Megan made the decision to run and get the phone to call the police. The police arrived quickly at the scene, managing to capture Sabrina still with the knife in hand. However, it was too late for Lisa, whose death was declared at the scene. Post-mortem examinations revealed the brutality of the attack. Lisa had been hit by 178 knife blows, a shocking number that demonstrates the ferocity of the attack. Most of the wounds showed signs that the knife had been twisted after penetrating the body, exactly as Kevin had instructed Sabrina to do. The attack was so violent that the knife used in the crime was bent due to the force applied. A particularly disturbing detail is that Haley, Lisa's youngest daughter, who was only 3 years old at the time, was found inside the bedroom closet. This means that the child was nearby and possibly witnessed the entire brutal attack against her mother. The police arrested Sabrina at the crime scene. When officers began to investigate the scene, it became evident that the attack had been extremely frenzied and violent. The brutality of the crime shocked even the experienced police officers who attended the occurrence. This tragic event not only took Lisa's life in a brutal way, but also deeply traumatized her daughters, especially little Haley, who was hidden in the closet during the attack, and Megan, who witnessed part of the horrific scene. 7. Consequences. Immediately after Lisa Knoeffel's murder, a series of events unfolded, revealing Kevin Knoeffel's suspicious behavior. As soon as he was informed by the police about his wife's murder, Kevin rushed home. The officers who received him noticed that his behavior was quite unusual for someone who had just lost his wife in such a violent manner. Instead of showing sadness, anger, or any sign of mourning, Kevin seemed more curious about the details of the crime. He asked questions about the crime scene, how everything had happened, and looked around as if he was searching for something specific. He also asked if Sabrina had already given a statement. This attitude raised immediate suspicions among the investigators. On the morning following the murder, on November 16th, Kevin wasted no time in contacting the insurance company. He called to inform them about his wife's death and requested the deposit of the life insurance policy amount into his current account. The speed with which Kevin sought to receive the insurance money caught the attention of the authorities. With the insurance money in hand, Kevin began to spend extravagantly. He bought a new house and a new car, as well as taking expensive trips. His financial behavior gave the impression that he didn't care about the future or the consequences of his spending. This attitude of spending, if there was no tomorrow, was another red flag for the police officers investigating the case. While Kevin was enjoying the insurance money, Sabrina remained in police custody. Surprisingly, Kevin showed no concern for Sabrina's well-being. He didn't visit her even once after her arrest. This abandonment began to generate feelings of anger and betrayal in Sabrina, who gradually realized that she had been used by Kevin. Sabrina's behavior after the crime is also noteworthy. Initially, she was in a state of shock and didn't say a single word. It seemed that she herself couldn't believe what she had just done. This initial silence from Sabrina made the initial investigations into the case difficult. All of these actions and behaviors by Kevin in the days and weeks following Lisa's murder not only raised suspicions about his involvement in the crime, but also helped create a clearer picture of the kind of person he was and his true motivations. His apparent lack of mourning, his rush to receive the insurance money, and his extravagant spending painted the image of a man more concerned with financial gains than with the loss of his wife or the fate of his supposed lover. 8. Investigation. The investigation into Lisa Knoefel's murder began immediately after the crime. The police officers who arrived at the crime scene already noticed suspicious elements, mainly related to Kevin Knoefel's behavior. The first aspect that caught the investigators' attention was Kevin's atypical reaction when informed about his wife's death. Instead of showing sadness or shock, he seemed more interested in the details of the crime. Kevin asked questions about how everything happened, looked around the crime scene as if searching for something specific, and asked if Sabrina had already given a statement. This unusual behavior for someone who had just lost his wife raised an initial alert for the police. Investigators were also intrigued by how quickly Kevin sought to receive Lisa's life insurance money. The day after the murder, he had already contacted the insurance company to inform them about the death and request payment of the policy. This rush to receive the money raised suspicions about his motivations. Kevin's financial behavior after receiving the insurance payment became another focus of the investigation. He began to spend extravagantly, buying a new house, a new car, and taking expensive trips. This spending pattern, as if there was no concern for the future, seemed suspicious to investigators, especially considering the tragic circumstances of his wife's death. Another crucial element in the investigation was the history of communications between Kevin and Sabrina. Investigators discovered that in the 2 weeks prior to the murder, Kevin and Sabrina had communicated by phone 1,491 times. Additionally, on the day of the crime, between 7 p.m. and 1 a.m., they exchanged 78 text messages. This unusual frequency of communication, especially considering that Sabrina was supposedly just Kevin's adopted daughter, raised serious suspicions about the nature of their relationship and their possible involvement in planning the crime. The investigation also focused on the relationship between Kevin and Sabrina. Although initially presented as an adoptive father-daughter relationship, evidence emerged of an improper relationship between them. Family members and friends of the couple were interrogated and provided testimonies suggesting an inappropriate relationship between Kevin and Sabrina. Sabrina's initial silence after the crime was also a challenge for investigators. Her refusal to speak made it difficult to obtain crucial information in the early moments of the investigation. As the investigation progressed, the police began to build a case suggesting that Lisa's murder was not an isolated act committed by Sabrina, but rather the result of a plan elaborated by Kevin, motivated by the desire to be with Sabrina and receive the life insurance money. The meticulous investigation, which included analysis of phone records, spending patterns, testimonies from acquaintances, and the suspect's behavior, was crucial in unraveling the truth behind this brutal and complex crime. 9. Sabrina's confession. 8 months after Lisa Knoeffel's murder, in August 2013, a significant turn occurred in the case. Sabrina, who until then had remained silent, finally decided to reveal the truth about Kevin's involvement in the crime. During the months following her arrest, Sabrina had time to reflect on the events that led to the murder. A crucial factor that seems to have influenced her decision to confess was Kevin's apparent abandonment. Since her arrest, Kevin had not visited her once, contradicting all the promises of love and a future together that he had made before the crime. This abandonment generated a growing feeling of anger and betrayal in Sabrina. She began to realize that she had been manipulated and used by Kevin for his own selfish purposes. The realization that Kevin didn't care about her, even after she had committed such an extreme act for him, was probably the catalyst for her decision to tell the truth. Driven by these feelings, Sabrina took the initiative to call the investigator responsible for the case. During this meeting, she finally broke her silence and revealed all the details about Kevin's involvement in the planning and execution of Lisa's murder. In her testimony, Sabrina told everything in detail. Although the document doesn't provide specific information about the exact content of her confession, we can infer that she likely revealed information about 1. The beginning of her improper relationship with Kevin. 2. The discussions Kevin had with her about killing Lisa. 3. The details of the plan that Kevin elaborated, including the specific instructions he gave on how to commit the crime. 4. The emotional manipulation that Kevin used to convince her to commit the murder, including staging an emotional crisis the day before the crime. 5. The promises Kevin made about a future together after Lisa's death. 6. Kevin's knowledge of Lisa's life insurance policy and how it motivated the crime. 7. The numerous communications between them in the weeks leading up to the murder, including the 78 text messages exchanged on the day of the crime. Sabrina's confession was a crucial turning point in the investigation. Her revelations provided authorities with the necessary evidence to link Kevin directly to the planning of the murder, transforming him from a peripheral figure into a main suspect. This confession not only clarified the details of the crime, but also shed light on the manipulative and abusive dynamics of the relationship between Kevin and Sabrina. It revealed how an older man in a position of authority exploited the emotional vulnerability of a young woman with a history of mental problems for his own selfish and criminal purposes. Sabrina's decision to tell the truth, although late, was fundamental for justice to be done, only for Lisa, but also for herself as a victim of manipulation and abuse. 10. Trial and sentencing. In June 2014, approximately a year and a half after Lisa Knoeffel's murder, the case finally went to trial. This was a crucial moment in the pursuit of justice for Lisa, and in holding those involved in her brutal murder accountable. Sabrina, who had already confessed her involvement in the crime, chose to plead guilty. This decision meant that she would not go through a full trial, but rather a sentencing hearing later. Her confession and guilty plea were important factors that influenced the course of the case. Kevin Knoefel, on the other hand, maintained his position of innocence and pleaded not guilty to all charges against him. This decision led to a full trial, where both the prosecution and defense had the opportunity to present their evidence and arguments. Kevin's defense adopted a strategy that attempted to place all the blame on Sabrina. They argued that Sabrina already had serious pre-existing mental disorders and that, because of this, she couldn't distinguish her fantasies from reality. According to the defense, Sabrina had become obsessed with her adoptive father, but they vehemently denied that Kevin and Sabrina had any kind of improper relationship. Kevin's defense team claimed that Sabrina's reason for taking Lisa's life was her delusional belief that, with Lisa out of the way, she would have a chance to be with Kevin. They insisted that Kevin loved his wife and was suffering greatly from everything that had happened, painting him as a victim of the actions of a mentally disturbed young woman. The prosecution, in turn, presented a strong case against Kevin. They brought as witnesses several family members and friends of the couple, who stated they had noticed the improper relationship between Kevin and Sabrina. These witnesses provided details about behaviors and interactions that suggested a relationship that went beyond the normal relationship between an adoptive father and daughter. A crucial piece of evidence presented by the prosecution was the phone records showing the unusual frequency of communication between Kevin and Sabrina. In the 2 weeks prior to the murder, they had communicated by phone 1,491 times, an alarming number that suggested a much closer relationship than normal. Moreover, on the day of the murder, between 7 p.m. and 1 a.m., they exchanged 78 text messages, which was interpreted as evidence of coordination of the crime. The prosecution also emphasized the financial motive behind the murder, pointing to Lisa's $800,000 life insurance policy and Kevin's behavior after receiving the money, including buying a new house, a new car, and expensive trips. Sabrina also testified against Kevin, providing sordid details about their relationship. She even mentioned intimate details about Kevin's body, such as a birthmark in his genital region, which was seen as proof that they really had a sexual relationship. After hearing all the evidence and testimonies, the jury deliberated for about 9 hours before reaching a verdict. Kevin Knoefel was found guilty of all charges, including sexual assault against a minor, 3 charges of complicity in murder, and 2 charges of conspiracy to kill someone. Based on these convictions, Kevin Knoefel was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole only after serving a minimum of 30 years of his sentence. Sabrina, who had previously pleaded guilty, received a similar sentence, life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. These severe sentences reflect the gravity of the crime committed and the role that both Kevin and Sabrina played in the planning and execution of Lisa Knoeffel's brutal murder. So, what did you think of this surprising and disturbing case? I'd really like to know your opinion. Leave your comment below, sharing your thoughts about this story. If you liked the video and want to continue following real criminal cases, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to receive all notifications. This way, you won't miss any new content. Until the next case, and thank you for watching.